My sister's cruel joke shattered my family's peace. At her gender reveal, I exposed her secrets, and her world crumbled in an instant. Hey everyone, I'm Marissa, and I'd like to share a story that's been weighing on my mind for some time now. This is a tale about betrayal, family, and the unexpected twists life throws at us. It all started with a seemingly harmless joke, but things quickly spiraled out of control. I'm sure you've been in a situation where one small moment can change everything. But how did I overcome it? How did I deal with the fallout? Stick around till the end to find out what happened, and how I found strength when everything seemed to be falling apart. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss the next story I have in store for you. Your support means the world to me. Thank you for being here. It all started with a simple family gathering, an innocent celebration for my father's 70th birthday. You'd think such an occasion would be full of joy, laughter, and nostalgia. But for me, it was the day everything changed. I'm Marissa, and my family has always been a little complicated. Growing up, I was always the quiet one, the one who observed the chaos around me. And at the heart of it all was my sister, Olivia. She was the loud one, the dramatic one, always the center of attention. Now, let me give you a little background on Olivia. She thrives in the spotlight, whether it's by making grand entrances at family events or belittling others to make herself feel superior. No moment was too sacred for Olivia to commandeer it. And when it came to my dad's birthday party, she did just that. I had spent weeks planning, picking out decorations, choosing the perfect menu, and ensuring everything went smoothly. But Olivia, she didn't lift a finger, not even a simple reply to the invitation until the night before. Typical. She arrived late, naturally. But instead of slipping in quietly, she made her presence known with the sound of her stiletto heels clicking across the floor. She wore oversized sunglasses and a scarf that looked more appropriate for a fashion show than a backyard party. She didn't even apologize for her lateness. Instead, she just laughed it off, casually saying, "You know how it is." It wasn't long before the focus of the entire party shifted to her. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. The music seemed too old-fashioned for her taste. The food? Well, it was fine, but she had some suggestions for improvement. By the time dinner started, the tension in the room was palpable. And there, amidst the chatter and laughter, I noticed it. Olivia, sitting across from me, eyes glued to her phone, rolling her eyes. She was bored. But this time, it wasn't just her usual attitude. No, this time she was about to cross a line. There's always been something about Olivia that rubs me the wrong way. I've never been able to pinpoint exactly what it is. Maybe it's the way she effortlessly stirs up drama wherever she goes, or maybe it's how she has the subtle, but constant need to make everyone around her feel like they're beneath her. But whatever it is, I've always managed to push it aside. After all, we're family, right? We should be able to tolerate each other's quirks. But what she said that evening, it wasn't a joke, it was a calculated attack. And I had no idea that her words would hit as hard as they did. Max, my 5-year-old, was doing his usual thing, chattering away about his latest school project. This time, he was excited to tell everyone about his science project, where he had made a volcano explosion as part of his class presentation. His face lit up with that innocent, wide-eyed enthusiasm that only kids can pull off. It's infectious, really. Even my dad, who usually doesn't engage much in kid talk, was genuinely entertained. Max's excitement had a way of pulling people in, making them smile, and before long, everyone was hanging on to every word he said about lava and eruptions. In the middle of this, though, Olivia leaned in. It wasn't just a casual lean. It was the kind of move that commanded attention, like she had something important to say, or better yet, something she wanted to make sure everyone heard. Her lips curled up into one of those smirks she always has when she knows she's about to drop a bombshell. She glanced around the table to make sure everyone was within earshot, then whispered loudly to her husband, David, just loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Isn't it funny how Max doesn't really look like Jason, does he? I swear, he looks more like that guy from college. What was his name? Ryan? The name hit me like a ton of bricks. My heart skipped a beat. I could feel the blood drain from my face. Ryan, my ex-boyfriend from college. A name I hadn't thought about in years. Of course, Jason knew about Ryan. He knew that we had dated for a while before we met. But why in the world would Olivia bring him up at a family gathering? And more importantly, why would she do it in front of everyone, in front of Jason, of all people? I glanced at Jason, expecting to see him laugh it off or brush it aside. But there was no chuckle, no smirk, just a frozen look on his face. He was staring at his plate, his grip tightening around his fork. Olivia didn't just drop a joke. She dropped a bomb, and now I could feel the tension thickening in the air. The table went quiet, and it felt like time had stopped. The mood shifted from light-hearted to something much more sinister. Olivia sat back in her chair, sipping her wine, acting as though she'd just made a harmless, offhand comment. But her face, the smugness on her face, told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just a careless remark. This wasn't a joke. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was planting a seed of doubt in Jason's mind. And even though she tried to play it off, I knew the damage was done. Jason didn't say anything. His fork remained suspended in the air, as if he were paralyzed, unable to finish his bite. His face had gone completely stiff. He wasn't even looking at me, which was the worst part. It wasn't just his silence. It was the way his body had physically withdrawn, like he was retreating into himself. He wasn't here with me, not anymore. His eyes were locked on his plate, but his thoughts, I could see them swirling. And they weren't about volcanoes anymore. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but I couldn't get my voice to work. For a few seconds, I just sat there, my throat tight, my mind racing. What was I supposed to say? What could I say? Olivia had just made a joke. Sure, but the implication behind it, the implication that Max might not be Jason's son, wasn't something you could just brush off. And what hurt more was that Olivia didn't even see what she had just done. She didn't even recognize the weight of her words. Finally, the silence was broken, but it wasn't Jason who spoke. It was me. My voice came out hoarse, but I couldn't keep it in any longer. What are you implying, Olivia? She looked at me with wide eyes, like she had no idea what I was talking about, but her lips were still twisted into that same smug grin. Oh, nothing, she said, her voice dripping with fake innocence. Just joking, Marissa. You're way too serious. I almost couldn't believe it. She was pretending that I was overreacting. She was acting like it was no big deal. But I knew what she had done. It wasn't just a joke. It was a calculated attempt to make Jason question everything, to cast doubt on our entire relationship, to plant uncertainty about Max. Jason still hadn't said a word. I looked at him again, trying to read his expression, but it was like staring at a wall. His face was hardening into something unrecognizable. And in that moment, I felt something snap inside me. It was as though a line had been crossed, and there was no going back. My stomach twisted into knots, and I couldn't even breathe properly. Was this happening? Was she really trying to tear my family apart with one careless comment? I had known Olivia for years, and I had dealt with her passive-aggressive behavior for just as long. But I never thought she'd go this far. Max, oblivious to the storm brewing around him, kept talking about his volcano project, unaware of the tension that had suddenly taken over the table. But I noticed. He noticed. The air was thick, and even he, at 5 years old, could feel it. He stopped mid-sentence, looking around the table, and then his eyes met mine. His innocent face, normally filled with joy, was now clouded with confusion. "Mom?" he asked softly, his voice almost a whisper. "Why is everyone so quiet?" That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. This wasn't just about me. This was about Max. And I had to protect him. But I also had to protect myself. I wasn't going to let Olivia's words, her toxic little games, destroy my family. Not this time. I swallowed hard and looked back at Jason. Still no response. Just the silent tension that now defined the space between us. But I knew one thing for sure. Things had changed. Forever. After that night, everything felt different. The air between Jason and me was thick with tension, like a cloud that wouldn't dissipate. I tried to tell myself it was just Olivia being Olivia, always stirring the pot and making everything about her. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. Jason's silence spoke volumes. He wasn't the type to confront issues head-on. I knew him well enough to understand that. Instead, he chose to retreat into himself, and that was what scared me the most. For the first few days, I convinced myself that maybe it was just a passing thing. Maybe Jason was just shaken by Olivia's words, and it would all blow over soon. But every time I looked at him, I could see it. The uncertainty in his eyes. It wasn't just directed at Olivia. It was directed at Max. Every time Jason looked at our son, his gaze was different. There was a distance there now, a subtle shift that I couldn't ignore. I watched as Jason became more withdrawn. He started avoiding me, which was bad enough, but worse, he began avoiding Max. He didn't even play with him like he used to. Max, in his innocent way, tried to engage with Jason, pulling him into his games or showing him new drawings, but Jason would just nod or mumble something non-committal before turning away. I could feel Max's disappointment in the air, and it broke my heart. It didn't take long for Max to notice the shift in his dad. One afternoon, while I was cleaning up the kitchen, Max came to me with a furrowed brow. He looked up at me, his little face filled with confusion. "Mom, why does Daddy look so sad? Why doesn't he play with me anymore?" My heart sank. What was I supposed to say to that? I couldn't give him an explanation that wouldn't break his heart. Instead, I knelt down beside him and ruffled his hair, trying to hide the knot in my throat. "Daddy's just tired, sweetheart. He'll be okay." Max didn't look convinced, but he nodded and ran off to play with his toys. I couldn't help but watch him for a moment, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Was I failing him? Was I failing Jason? What had happened to the happy family we once were? I knew I had to talk to Jason about it. We needed to address the elephant in the room. But every time I brought it up, he shut me down, almost like he couldn't bear to discuss it. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I finally confronted him. The frustration had been building for days, and I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Jason," I started, my voice trembling just slightly, "we need to talk about this. We can't just pretend like nothing's wrong. Olivia's words were nothing but a joke, and you can't let her get in your head like this." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he just stared at his hands, his eyes avoiding mine. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost reluctant. "It's not that I don't trust you, Marissa. It's just, what if? What if she's right?" His words felt like a slap in the face. I recoiled, feeling the sting deep in my chest. "What do you mean, what if she's right?" I shot back, my voice growing sharper. "What are you saying, Jason? You think Max might not be yours?" Jason didn't meet my eyes. He just sighed heavily, rubbing his face as if the weight of the conversation was too much to bear. "I don't know what to think anymore. You can't blame me for wondering. Olivia's not exactly the type to joke around about something like this." It was in that moment that I realized something. Jason wasn't just doubting Olivia's words. He was doubting me, and worse, he was doubting Max. The betrayal stung deeper than anything Olivia could have said. For the first time, I felt like Jason wasn't on my side anymore. I wasn't just fighting Olivia and her toxic games. I was fighting my own husband. The man who was supposed to stand by me, through thick and thin, was now questioning everything we had built together. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it was hard. "I don't need to prove anything, Jason," I snapped, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "If you trust me, you'll trust our son. And if you don't, we need to talk about it. Because this isn't just about a joke. It's about something much bigger." He didn't respond, and that silence was worse than any argument we could have had. I could see it now, the distance between us, the way it grew wider with each passing day. That night, as I lay awake in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being alone in a marriage that was slowly slipping away. I had never felt so isolated in my life. Jason's silence continued for days, and it became harder to ignore. His avoidance wasn't just about the lack of conversation. It was in everything he did. He was withdrawing from me, from Max, and from the family we had once been. Every time I tried to talk to him, it was like I was speaking to a stranger. The man I had known for years, the man I had built a life with, seemed like a distant memory. And Max continued to ask questions that I didn't have answers for. "Is Daddy mad at me?" he asked one night, his voice barely above a whisper as he clutched his stuffed animal tightly in his arms. "Why is he so quiet all the time?" My heart shattered. How could I explain this to my little boy? How could I explain that the man he loved, the man he looked up to, was suddenly distant, unsure, and broken? I wanted to shield him from the chaos that was unfolding, but it was impossible. He could feel it too. He could sense the tension in the air, the way the family that once felt whole was now fractured. The nights were the hardest. I found myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what had happened to us. What had happened to our love, our trust, our family? Was this just a phase? Was this something we could overcome? Or had Olivia's cruel joke planted a seed of doubt that was going to destroy everything? I wanted to believe that Jason would come around, that he would realize how unfounded his suspicions were. But the longer he stayed silent, the more my doubts grew. Was he questioning me because of Olivia's words? Or was it something deeper, something that had always been there, just waiting to surface? I didn't know anymore. What I did know was that I couldn't keep living in this limbo. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine when it was clear that our marriage was teetering on the edge. And as much as I wanted to make things right, I realized something, that it wasn't just about Olivia anymore. It was about Jason and me, and whether or not we could find our way back to each other. But in that moment, I didn't have the answers. All I had was the fear that this doubt, this question, would be the thing that tore us apart. And I had no idea how to stop it. Knock knock. Now you're about to watch the best part of the story. But before that, make sure to subscribe to my channel so we can keep going together. I'd had enough. I wasn't going to sit back and let Olivia ruin my life without facing the consequences. I wasn't just going to let her tear my family apart for sport. She crossed a line and now she needed to pay. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not this time. The thing about revenge is that it can be a double-edged sword. There's a sense of satisfaction in the planning, in knowing that you're about to expose someone for the lies they've been living. But at the same time, there's a little voice in the back of your head asking, "Are you sure you want to go this far?" For days, I ignored that voice. I didn't have time for second-guessing. Olivia had made her move, and now it was my turn. It all started with my mom telling me that Olivia was hosting a gender reveal party for her and David's baby. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to stay away and let Olivia have her little moment of attention. But I couldn't. I knew what I had to do. It wasn't just about exposing her for the things she'd done. It was about making her feel the same humiliation she had caused me. It wasn't enough to simply expose her lies. It was about showing her that I wasn't afraid to make everything public, to tear apart the perfect little image she had built for herself. Over the next few days, I spent hours compiling evidence, documenting Olivia's every online move, going through her social media posts, screenshots of her secretive messages to Ryan. I even dug deeper into some of the more cryptic comments she'd made about her marriage. I wasn't just going to make accusations. I was going to be thorough. I wanted the proof to be irrefutable, in case Olivia tried to wriggle out of it. The more I gathered, the more I realized how carefully she had been constructing her lies. She was sneaky, yes, but she wasn't invincible. Her perfect life, her carefully curated image of being the doting wife, the mother-to-be, was a house of cards, ready to fall the moment someone blew it down. I wasn't just doing this for me. I wasn't just doing it for my family. I was doing it because Olivia had destroyed something in me, and the only way I could feel whole again was by making her face the consequences of her actions. She had humiliated me, made me question everything I knew about my marriage and my family. Now, it was her turn to feel what that kind of doubt could do to a person. When the day of the party finally arrived, I was ready. I walked into the venue, the air thick with excitement, the walls adorned in pastel blue and pink decorations. Everyone was buzzing about the baby, asking Olivia all the usual questions about names, nurseries, and future plans. She was in her element, soaking up every bit of attention, just the way she liked it. David stood by her side, but there was something different about him. You could see it in the way he hovered near her, always just slightly disconnected, as if the smile on his face didn't quite reach his eyes. It was clear that Olivia was loving every moment, and for a brief second, I almost felt guilty for what I was about to do. But then I remembered why I was here. She deserved this. She had made my life hell, and now it was time for her to face the truth. The moment arrived. The balloon popped, pink confetti rained down, and the room erupted in cheers. But amidst the celebration, I was already preparing my move. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I walked toward Olivia with the slow, deliberate steps of someone who knew exactly what they were about to do. I wasn't nervous. This was the moment of truth, and I was finally going to make her face the music. Olivia was surrounded by a small group of friends, all oohing and eyeing over the baby's gender, basking in her glory. I approached her, a smirk playing on my lips. Her eyes flickered toward me, and I could tell she saw the determination in my gaze. She wasn't ready for what was coming. "So," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "when are you going to tell David about Ryan? Or should I?" The words hit the room like a stone thrown into still water. The conversations around us died instantly. Olivia's face drained of color, and her eyes darted nervously, scanning the room, probably trying to find a way to laugh it off. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice trembling. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was the kind of nervous smile you give when you're caught red-handed, but you still try to hold on to some shred of control. I didn't let her off the hook. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and handed it to David, without a single word. On the screen were the screenshots, the messages, everything I had gathered. The proof was right there in front of him, undeniable. I watched as his face went from confusion to realization. His jaw tightened, and his hands shook as he flipped through the messages. His eyes flicked up to Olivia, then back to the phone. And just like that, Olivia's perfect little world came crashing down. David didn't speak immediately. He just stood there, the phone in his hand, staring at the screen like he couldn't process what he was seeing. Olivia tried to talk, but the words wouldn't come. She stumbled over her sentences, her voice rising in panic. "David, please. It's not what you think." "I didn't." David held up his hand to stop her, his eyes still locked on the phone. His voice was low, almost hollow. "How could you do this, Olivia?" I watched her break. She wasn't the calm, collected woman she usually was. Now, she was nothing more than a shell of her former self, desperately trying to salvage whatever she could. But it was too late. "Please," she begged, her voice shaking with fear. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. You know how things are. I never thought anyone would find out." David turned his back to her, pacing away slowly, shaking his head. "No, Olivia. You've betrayed me. You've lied to me. To everyone." The room was completely silent now, and all eyes were on Olivia. No one spoke. The harshness of the situation hung heavy in the air. Olivia stood there, her perfect facade completely shattered, her eyes wide and frantic. She was alone in her humiliation, just like I had been for so long. I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. Maybe it was because seeing her break didn't bring me the closure I expected. Or maybe it was because, in that moment, I realized that this wasn't about making her suffer. It was about me taking control of my own life again. But I wasn't done yet. I wasn't just going to walk away and let her slink back into her corner. Olivia had spent so long making me feel like I wasn't enough, like my family wasn't enough. Now it was time for everyone to see her for who she truly was. She wasn't the perfect wife. She wasn't the perfect mother-to-be. She was just a woman who was willing to tear down anyone in her path to get what she wanted. As the chaos unfolded, I felt the weight lift from my chest. The truth was out, and as Olivia's world unraveled, I could only watch as she came face to face with the consequences of her actions. David didn't say much at first. He just stared at the screen, his face slowly turning red with anger. His hands gripped the phone tightly as if trying to steady himself, but his fingers shook. "Olivia," he said, his voice shaking, "is the baby even mine?" The room fell utterly silent. The air was thick with tension as everyone waited for Olivia to crack, for her to break down and admit the truth. But she didn't. Instead, she kept up the act, her voice falsely calm. "What are you talking about? This is just a misunderstanding. There's nothing to worry about." But by then it was too late. The damage had already been done, and the truth was hanging in the air, unspoken but undeniable. David took a step back, his face now a mixture of disbelief and rage. The entire room was watching, eyes wide and mouths shut, as Olivia continued her frantic defense. But every word she said felt more desperate than convincing. She was floundering, trying to salvage what little was left of her perfect facade. David didn't wait for more. Without saying another word, he walked out of the party, his footsteps heavy with finality. It wasn't just the end of the evening, it was the end of their marriage. The rest of us stood there, stunned into silence. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Olivia had no more excuses. The truth had been exposed, and there was no running from it. By the end of the week, David had moved out of their shared home. The divorce papers were filed soon after, and Olivia was left to face the consequences of her actions. It was over for her, at least as far as David was concerned. And as for the rest of us, well, things weren't much better for her. Olivia, once the star of every family gathering, was now the pariah. She became an outcast, even among those who had once supported her. Friends who had cheered her on at every turn were now avoiding her calls. Family members gave her cold stares, no longer willing to tolerate her lies. The support she had once relied on for her image was now gone, stripped away by her own deceit. She had no one left. Her world had crumbled around her, and she had no one to blame but herself. But it wasn't just Olivia who was suffering the fallout. I was too. The relief I felt from seeing Olivia exposed was overwhelming, but it didn't come without a cost. I felt almost guilty for the sense of victory that washed over me. Was I supposed to feel this way? Shouldn't I have felt more sympathy for the woman who had just lost everything? Jason and I, after months of tension, finally started talking again. It wasn't easy. For so long, we had avoided the elephant in the room, pretending everything was fine when, in reality, we were both walking on eggshells. But after the chaos of that night, the truth had been laid bare. There was no more denying the strain Olivia had caused in our relationship. Jason finally apologized for letting Olivia's words get to him, for allowing her to plant that seed of doubt in his mind. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet admission of his own vulnerability. "I shouldn't have let her get inside my head," he said, his voice low but sincere. "I should have trusted you, Marissa." I nodded, not knowing exactly what to say. The weight of everything that had happened still felt heavy in the air between us, but there was something healing in his words. We weren't back to where we had been, not yet, but it was a start. We decided to go to therapy together, to work through the issues that had built up over the past few months. Slowly but surely, we began rebuilding our trust. It wasn't instantaneous, and there were days when it felt like we were two strangers trying to figure out how to be a couple again. But with each conversation, each small gesture of understanding, we found our way back to each other. Jason started being more open, asking about my feelings and listening in ways he hadn't before. I began to feel like I could breathe again, like the weight of the world that had been on my chest for so long was finally starting to lift. Olivia, however, had no such luck. As the weeks passed, her isolation only deepened. The calls from friends stopped, the invitations to events stopped coming, and soon, she was left entirely on her own. Her social media presence, once a carefully curated showcase of her life, now sat in silence. No one commented on her posts anymore. No one liked her photos. The feedback that had once fueled her ego now stood as a stark reminder of everything she had lost. I remember one evening, when Olivia showed up at a family gathering uninvited. I couldn't understand why she thought it was okay to just waltz back into our lives after everything she had done. The tension in the room was unbearable. No one said anything to her, but everyone felt the chill. Olivia tried to make small talk with a few of the relatives, but it was clear that her presence made everyone uncomfortable. She was like a ghost in the room, a reminder of what had been broken and could never be fixed. The worst part for Olivia was that no one came to her defense. No one was there to comfort her. Not her mother, not her friends, not even David. She had built a life on lies and manipulation, and now she had to face the cold, hard truth. She had burned every bridge she had ever crossed. The more she tried to salvage her image, the more people saw through her act. For me, the relief was almost too much to bear at times. It wasn't that I enjoyed seeing Olivia suffer. It was just that, after everything, I finally felt like I was in control again. The sense of justice, the feeling of having done the right thing, filled the void that had been left by the months of uncertainty and betrayal. Olivia thought she could break my family, but in the end, it was her own lies that destroyed everything she had. Her perfect life had been nothing more than a facade, and now, everyone saw it for what it really was. Looking back, I realized something important, that sometimes you have to take control of the narrative, even when it feels impossible. I had let Olivia's cruelty define me for so long, but now I was the one writing my own story. It was my family, my marriage, and my future that I needed to protect. And while Olivia was left picking up the pieces of her shattered life, I was finally beginning to rebuild mine, piece by piece. This story is about resilience, trust, and the power of taking control when others try to destroy your life. It's about how lies and manipulation can wreak havoc on families and how, sometimes, the truth has a way of coming out in the most unexpected ways. Olivia thought she was the master of the game, but in the end, she was the one who lost. What do you think about the story? I'd love to hear your thoughts, feelings, or any insights you may have. Feel free to leave a comment below. I always appreciate hearing from you. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in our journey together. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this story, and I can't wait to share more with you soon.